Hey, I'm Duck YouTube and welcome back to a new video with Rams fan YT. In today's video, we're going over my score predictions for the upcoming week of football. We've got the EFL Cup Semi-Finals, a few local derbies involved. So let's just dive straight into it with tonight's action at the Emirates in the second leg of the EFL Cup Semi-Final. Arsenal versus Chelsea. Arsenal are taking the slender 3-2 advantage into the home draw. I might do a live watch along for this one tonight if I don't think I've got anything on. So I think Arsenal maybe try to play this quite safe and will have a conservative 1-0 win. Enough to see them through to the next round, but I think they'll be more focused on trying to score early and then just defend that 2-goal lead. Blackburn Rovers versus Sheffield Wednesday. News coming out of Blackburn Rovers camp is that they have sacked Valérien Ismaël this week. They are currently in relegation zone, so you can kind of understand it from that perspective. 3 points off safety, although they do have a game in hand over West Brom, who, if they win, they would overtake. The problem is this game in hand. Well, the thing is, the game in hand is tonight, and it's up against Sheffield Wednesday, which is a relatively speaking easy game. It's a bit of a free hit. It should be a win for Blackburn. Now, I don't think Blackburn it was only yesterday, I believe, that they sacked Ismaël. So I don't think they've appointed a new manager yet. I mean, there's obviously going to be all sorts of speculation about who is going to be the new manager. I mean, who would you like to see? But apparently, David Wagner is the one who is leading the charge at the moment with Slaven Bilic in second. Slaven Bilic, well, that's a throwback a bit, isn't it? He was around during West Brom, wasn't he? He was manager of. But yes, David Wagner being the lead favourite of this one. I mean, I'm not most convinced by Wagner, to be honest. Don't think he did overly well when he was with Norwich. I mean, they did get to the playoffs under him, but yeah, he's just his style of football for me. He's clearly successful, but is he good for a relegation scrap? I don't know. Anyway, for this game, I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw at Ewood Park. I think Sheffield Wednesday might be able to scrape a point in this game. It's always risky suggesting anything other than a loss for Sheffield Wednesday, though. Hull City versus Xavi Garcia. Another managerial casualty is Watford. And yes, they're 4 games without a win, but it was actually a resignation. To be honest, he resigned. He probably walked before he got pushed. As we know with Watford, they love to go around a endless helter-skelter of managers. They're only 3 points off the playoffs. It's quite a competitive season this season. And I thought, you know what, Xavi Garcia actually turned around what was beginning to seem quite a sort of floating sort of into obscurity Watford side. So, I mean, the manager has not been permanently appointed yet. I would say it's a difficult one. There is a lot of people that potentially Watford could consider. I mean, John Dole Thomason is interestingly the person who is one of the favourites. Russell Martin and Diego Martinez. I mean, both Thomason and Martinez very much would be a Watford's level of appointment. Russell Martin, well, it's a risky one. We know his record has been not great of late. I think a 1-1 draw in this one. Hull doing phenomenally well. 5 points now off the automatics. 4 wins in a row. Just suspect that Watford could edge out something in this one, which, I mean, it's probably better for Watford than Hull at the moment. Sheffield United versus Oxford United. 17th versus 23rd. Sheffield United, I don't think have much to play for now at this stage in the season. too little, too late to go on any sort of playoff charge. They're 11 points off, and I just don't think they'll bridge that gap. It's been an underwhelming season for the Blades, but I think they will get a victory over Oxford United, who I'm pretty certain will be relegated, but you never know. They are certainly defensively better than a fair few of the teams around them, and a bit better offensively than a few as well, but you just can't get the wins. 3-0 Sheffield United. Port Vale versus AFC Wimbledon. I'm going to go with an unlikely win for Port Vale. They won in their last game, and I think they might just be able to edge it out in this one. I mean, Wimbledon, they're in 17th. They've been on a bit bad run of form themselves. 4 games now without a win. Ideal time for Valiants, I think. 3-2 to Port Vale. Barnsley versus Northampton Town. Yes, Northampton in relegation zone. 4 defeats in a row. It's not great if you're a Northampton Town fan at the moment. Lots of calls to bring John Brady back and get rid of Kevin Nolan, and you can understandably see why. I think maybe a point, though. They may be able to rescue a point in this one. Barnsley have been vastly inconsistent this season, sitting in 15th. So we're going to go with a 2-2 draw. Burton Albion have a real crunch week. It's a possibility of getting 6 points and important ones, or it's an opportunity to be probably confirmed relegation thing is because they're up against Doncaster Rovers in the midweek, and then they have got a game up against Port Vale on the weekend. Doncaster Rovers is 1 point behind them, and if they can turn this around, Burton, and stay up, I would not be surprised. They are one of them teams that like to do that. At the moment, not going to draw myself convinced on that, but I will say they're going to win at home at the Pirelli Stadium. 2-0 to Burton Albion. Barnet versus Crewe Alexandra. Barnet very mid-table in 12th. I mean, Crewe's in 10th. They're not quite good enough, in my opinion, to be able to get into that playoff spot. And I think understandably, in a sense, we can kind of see why they just lose too many. 10 losses to be in a promotion fight isn't really good enough. I do suspect Barnet will add another defeat to that one if they're on a decent run. Only 1 defeat in the last 6, 4 wins during that spell. Barnet to win 2-1. Bristol Rovers versus Walsall. 3 draws in a row for Walsall. Bristol Rovers, I think they might nick one here. I just think Walsall such an uncertain team at this stage of the season. It's almost a repeat from last season. 1-0 to Bristol Rovers. I don't know if necessarily it's an easy game for Walsall this in the slightest. Same with Harrogate versus Swindon. Harrogate at the bottom of the league and look a bit down and out. But you know what? I think Swindon they had 3 defeats in the last 4 games. And they could potentially lose another one here. The mojo they had from early on in the season just doesn't seem to be here. I'm going to go 1-0 to Harrogate Town at Wetherby Road. Notts County versus Gillingham. Notts County in the playoffs, 4 wins in a row, but you know what? Gillingham, they're an interesting side. I know they're 14th mid-table, not a lot to play for, it would seem, but they do cause upsets in this league, and a 1-0 win for Gillingham is what I've gone with here. Altrincham versus Morecambe. All Northwestern occasion in this one. An important game for Morecambe, who have got rid of Singh. I can't remember his full name. I just remember it ended in Singh. But Morecambe has sacked their manager, essentially. And, I mean, a lot of people say bit unsurprising. You know, they shouldn't really be at this stage still in relegation zone. You can sort of understand why a fair few defeats to their name. They do look like they're going to be relegated this season. It seems a bit insurmountable, but maybe a change in the dugout will be good enough for Morecambe to maybe go on a run. But it needs to start here against Altrincham, and I think it does. 2-0 to Morecambe. Forest Green Rovers versus Woking. Forest Green Rovers in 6th. They've sort of fallen out of the automatics race, haven't they? But they'll probably be content to at least get a playoff place, which is what's needed. which I think they definitely get at this point in proceedings. I think they could drop points here. Woking, you never quite know what side of Woking is going to turn up, and I think they could get a draw here. A 1-1 draw in this game. Rochdale versus Boreham Wood. Rochdale winning 4 in a row. Boreham would have lost the last 3, but let's not forget it's 2nd versus 4th at the end of the day. And so both of these two teams have got a point to prove and gaps to make up over the top of the table, York City, who, if Rochdale do win this, will go top of the league and displace York. I've got a 0-0 draw here if this game goes ahead. I think at the moment it looks like it might. Chorley versus Leamington. Chorley, very mid-table and mediocre at this point in proceedings in the season. I think they'll probably only end up getting matched now around about 11th, 12th, really. And this is a game they should be winning, though, up against Leamington, who are bottom of the league. Although Leamington did win their last game, I still suspect a 2-1 win for the Magpies at Victory Park. It's just, I can't see Leamington staying up at this point in proceedings. Curzon Ashton versus Bedford Town. 16th place Bedford versus 12th place Curzon Ashton. A game which I wouldn't say has a lot riding on it, to be honest. I think Bedford have probably ran out enough points to stay out between now and the end of the season. I probably will anyway. So we're going to go with a 2-2 draw. I think a point each will probably be fair and representative of where their positions are. SE Fylde versus Peterborough Sports. I know Peterborough Sports have won the last 3 in a row, but surely this is a different level of challenge up against a Fylde side, which are very much looking to try and get to the top place, displace South Shields and get automatic promotion back to the National League. They've got 2 games in hand against South Shields, but they have got a total of 9 points to accumulate. A win here is the only thing that Fylde can do. And I think they duly do. Only 1-0 though. Kings Lynn Town versus Southport. Kings Lynn just above that relegation zone, as are Southport. A 19th versus 20th game here. It's a very, very big game, relatively speaking, to see who actually stays up. I think Kings Lynn maybe win this one. 1-0 at home. It's not going to be the prettiest game, but, you know, it gets the job done for the Linnets. Macclesfield versus Kidderminster Harriers. Kidderminster Harriers, basically tied with South Shields, most informed team in the division at the moment. And you can understand why they're in the playoffs now. I think they're quite likely to stay there till the end of the season now. Decent enough looking side, still concerned about the goal scoring output. And it's a difficult game against 8th place Macclesfield, who are just 2 points now away from the the playoffs. And they've got 3 games in hand over Scarborough. You would suspect they make it. But you never quite know. These backlog games can cause havoc. But I'm going to go 2-1 to Macclesfield here. Radcliffe versus Oxford City. Radcliffe in 6th versus a team that really, there's not a lot going for them. They're in 21st, Oxford City. It's a difficult one for Oxford City, but I think actually we may see a surprise result. They may be buoyed on by the fact that either Southport or Kings Lynn are going to be dropping points in this one, in the game tonight, and Oxford City will need to utilise that for their advantage. And I think they win 3-1. Bit of an odd result, but it does happen down in the depths of non-league. Spennymoor Town versus ASC Telford United. Telford are actually doing really, really well, and I am telling you now, they are going to get playoffs as a minimum. I could see them probably not getting a title, but, you know, going on some sort of crazy run and getting into the top 3. I mean, there's a lot of games to make up for that and wins to do that to happen feasibly. But yeah, they're up against Spennymoor. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw here because Spennymoor are that sort of side that They're not doing great of late, but they did win their last one, which will come to a bit of a relief for Spainmore fans. But yet they have all sorts of games in hands over the teams around them. They've played some of the lower end of games they played this season. So it's hard to place them, but they've been poor of late. But yeah, 1-1 draw. Cheshire United versus AFC Toten. Yeah, Cheshire 10th place, 4 points off the playoffs. I don't think it will be too insurmountable for them to be able to get it, but I just think there are probably better teams to do it. But, Toten are being hit and miss all season, to be honest, and I keep on thinking they're going to drop down the table any minute now. Cheshire, I've got to win 2-0 in this game. Dover Athletic versus Torquay United. Torquay have managed to breach to the top of the league now. Sort of a bit of a surprise, maybe, but they are the most informed team. So it's certainly something to consider. Dover are very hit and miss. They're in 15th. And I think maybe at the Crabble, they will be hold Torquay to a 2-2 draw. Ebbsfleet United versus Hemel Hempstead Town. Ebbsfleet in 7th, Hemel Hempstead in 6th. Another important game in this one. 1 point separating these two sides. Must win, I would argue, for both of these two teams if they want to stay in, because I think Maidstone will probably be gunning for them. Maidenhead, I'm just expecting to click into gear any minute now. And you've also got likes of Horsham, Chesham and Chelmsford all sort of in and amongst it as well. So I reckon this will actually be a 0-0 draw, as both teams will be desperate not to lose this game. Enfield Town versus Hampton and Richmond Borough. Relegation battle in this one. 20th versus 22nd. 6 points is what separates the two teams. So realistically, a must win for Enfield. I think at this point, Hampton Richmond Borough will probably be safe. It's between them and Farnborough. I think the rest of the bottom three are pretty much confirmed at this point, aren't they? I'm going to go with because they need it, a 1-0 win for Enfield Town at home. Suddenly does throw the door a bit open, a bit more competitive. Hornchurch versus Salisbury. Salisbury involved maybe in a relegation battle. They're 6 points clear of the team top of relegation zone. And it's one of the ones that'll probably finish below Bath, but they'll stay up at the end and probably quite comfortably as well. Hornchurch, well, they were at one point looking for the title, and they're still 1 point only off it with a game in hand, but I'm not convinced that they will make it, to be honest. It's been a successful season by all considerations from Hornchurch, but I think a 1-1 draw will be the result in this one. Maidenhead United versus Bath City. Maidenhead in 12th, very mid-table. Bath in 19th. It's got to be a win for Maidenhead if they are wanting any chance to push back up into that playoff contentions. And I think maybe at York Road, they do it. 2-1 to Maidenhead. The other EFL Cup semi-final game is Manchester City versus Newcastle United. And to be honest, with Newcastle, I wouldn't bother trying to retain the EFL Cup at this point. There's a large deficit. To go to the Etihad and win by more than 2 goals is a very difficult challenge. And they also got a couple of games up against Qarabag, which I think are more important because that means they stay in the Champions League, maybe get a bit deeper into the competition. I'm going to go 4-0 Man City in this one. Accrington Stanley versus Salford City on a Thursday night. Always odd when there's a game on a Thursday night. But this is in the Northwest. And I think Salford, for me, are going to be the team to win it. Let's be realistic here. It's going to be one of them ones that Salford are in top 3 for a reason. Accrington Stanley in 13th. They're on a decent run of form, actually, to be fair to Accrington. 6 games, only 1 defeat during that spell. 2-0. I'm going with Salford City here. But yes, the Ammies are doing well. Oh, it looks like we're not playing on a Friday night, but Nottingham Forest and Leeds United, our rivals, are. I'm actually rather Leeds United win this. 2-1 to Leeds United I've gone with. I'm just severely hoping that, like, you know, if they win, West Ham, if they didn't throw away that stupid winning position against Chelsea, would have made the gap quite close by now. But I still hold the hope that West Ham suddenly turn good and leapfrog Nottingham Forest. But we need Leeds to do us a favour. Charlton Athletic versus Queen's Park Rangers is also on, a London derby of sorts, East versus West. QPR in 11th, Charlton in 18th. I don't think there's actually a lot on in this game, to be honest. Neither side particularly needing a point, so I think a 1-1 draw will probably be a fair result. On to the Saturday, we've got Manchester United versus Tottenham Hotspur. It's going to be the most Man United thing, isn't it? They've suddenly managed to get, for the first time, it seems like all season, into the Champions League positions. And then they're playing against Spurs. And Spurs managed to hold a team from Manchester just last Sunday to a 2-2 draw and could maybe go one better and beat the red side of Manchester. And I've gone with that to be a 3-0 win to Spurs. AFC Bournemouth versus Aston Villa. Aston Villa in third. They are doing a very good job this season. They'll probably finish in the Champions League at this rate, maybe down in fourth, but it's still a decent season from Unai Emery's side. I think they get past Bournemouth narrowly, 1-0 win. They just need to get back to consistency. That's the problem with Villa at the moment. They've been a bit inconsistent, although admittedly they have had some difficult games in that spell. Arsenal versus Sunderland. Going to say it, easy win for Arsenal, I do feel, for this one. 5-1 to Arsenal. The Mackems getting brutally destroyed. Burnley versus West Ham United. Now, this is what I was talking about. 18th versus 19th. If West Ham can win this and Nottingham Forest lose it, it suddenly reduces the deficit quite a lot. And then you're beginning to question, can West Ham just about leapfrog Nottingham Forest? And I really hope they do. 2-1 to West Ham is what I'm going to go with here. Nottingham Forest are just tiring because of being in European competition. It will drain them, to be honest. It will absolutely drain legs. They're not got a big squad either. Fulham versus Everton. 9th versus 10th. Both on 34 points. Both with -1 goal difference. Realistically, not a lot between them. Fulham better, definitely in an attacking sense. The defensive sense, Everton are much better. I'm going to go with a 3-1 win, though, to Everton in this one. Swapping places. Not much in it. We still are going to be on telly. Don't worry about that, as Derby County are playing Ipswich Town at a 12:30 kickoff. Or 12:31, actually, isn't it? Because they're all a minute late. For 1 minute save a life, something like that. We've taken a striker from Ipswich on loan, Sammy Smodics. A very decent player by all accounts. He was a very good player with Blackburn a few seasons back, being absolutely ripping up the Championship. Now, he can't play up against Ipswich because of the options, but we're on a decent run of form now. 1 defeat in the last 6. I'm talking this all up. We're only 2 points off from the playoffs, but I still, you know what? I actually think we could get to the playoffs now. I genuinely do. I think we overtake Millwall, but I'd rather we got 7th place as our end position. It's a good building block. And I think Ipswich probably win 2-0. Partly because we're at home and we've been horrendous at home and great away is part of the problem. Norwich City versus Blackburn Rovers. Another possible relegation scrapping on. 4 points separating these two teams. 19th place Norwich, 22nd place Blackburn. Norwich, though, are beginning to have a bit of sigh of relief, I think. They have finally pushed up a bit into 19th, away from that relegation zone. They need to carry on pushing, but they're doing decent. I think Blackburn get a point. A 2-2 draw in this one. Southampton versus Watford. I think Javi Garcia might be a mistake for Watford, to be honest. I know I know it was over his own volition, but I think Southampton maybe win this one. 3-2 to Southampton is what I've gone with. An end-to-end combative game, to say the least. Birmingham City versus Leicester City. An interesting one in terms of Leicester dropping down to 16th. They've not won in the last 4 games, Leicester. Birmingham are also in 13th, but they're 5 games unbeaten. It's also a bit of a local rivalry. I think maybe Leicester win this one. I keep on thinking Leicester's team is good enough to win this. 3-2 to Leicester City. They'll be desperately hoping that they don't get a 9 points deduction this season. I'm telling you now, because if they suddenly get a 9 points deduction, they end up on 29 points, which is the same as Blackburn, who are currently in relegation zone. I said it at the beginning of the season, if it came true that they would be relegated. I'm beginning to think the similar things. Hi-ho at Sheffield Wednesday today. Hi, who do you think will win the Premier League title this season? I reckon it's one of the 2 Manchester clubs. I will quickly answer that question. I think it will be Arsenal. I think Man City have thrown away a few opportunities to actually close them down, and I actually think Arsenal win it now at this point. There's your answer to the question. It's been a long time coming, hasn't it? Coventry City versus Oxford United. Another thing's been a long way coming, it seems. Is Coventry actually putting a convincing performance to look like they should be top of the league? And now the same amount of points as Middlesbrough. A must-win game, I will say, that stress this up against Oxford. They're in relegation zone. They should be winning these sort of games, and I think they do. I don't think Oxford make it easy, though. 1-0 to Coventry City. Hull City versus Bristol City. An interesting one. 3rd versus 9th. We all know Bristol City's last scoreline was a 5-0 demolition job by yours truly, the Rams. So maybe they have a bit of a reaction in this one. Hull also playing midweek while Bristol haven't. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw in this one. A bit of a reaction for Bristol. Still not the most great performance, but compared to where Hull are going at the moment, which seems a really strong performance, is week after week. It'd be a good point, I'd say. Preston North End versus Portsmouth. Yes, it's an odd one, isn't it? So I think Portsmouth have conveniently postponed their game tonight. I mean, yes, obviously, you can't always guarantee that games are going to be on, but it does feel a bit daft how every single game in the rest of the EFL can go on apart from Portsmouth. But so be it. And they're going to go up against Preston North End, though. It's a difficult game. Although Preston haven't won in the last 4, one of them was a defeat to Derby, wasn't it? I think maybe they go back to winning ways, Preston, here. 2-1 at home at Deepdale. West Bromwich Albion versus Stoke City. Yeah, I mean, West Brom in 21st, just above that relegation zone. 3 points is the gap. And I knew that the appointment that they made of their new manager, I can never remember what his actual name is. The lad from Minnesota, Eric Ramsey, is it? Was not a good idea. It was never a good idea. Stoke, I mean, they're a bit it's a local rivalry of sorts, and also they're a bit hit and miss at the moment. Fallen away a bit has Mark Robins' side. 1-1 draw at the Hawthorns for me in this one, which is still not really good enough for the Baggies. And I think there is a very realistic danger they do get relegated this season. I think they do, you know, which it would have been mad to say, wouldn't it, a few seasons back. Wrexham versus Millwall, a 5th versus 6th, which is convenient for Derby because if we do win Ipswich Town in the early kickoff, we can sort of take a back seat and just either of these teams, well, we'd be probably hoping for Wrexham to drop points, and it's a difficult game in this one. I'm going to go with a draw. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw at the Racecourse Ground. Can't decide a winner between these two at present. Luton Town versus Bradford City in League One. Yes, Bradford been a bit hit and miss now. They've dropped down to 5th. And Luton, well, they've been too hit and miss to be able to get into the playoffs. It's seeming a bit more of a closed, shut-up shop, maybe in the playoffs. I think Luton, though, will be well up for this game at Kenilworth Road. 4-0 to the Hatters. Port Vale versus Burton Albion. A local derby and a relegation 6-pointer. What more would you want as a football fan? If you are in the Staffordshire region, go get yourself down to this game because this is true to be a cracker. I don't think it's necessarily scoreline going to be, though, and I think it will be a dogged 0-0 draw with a lot of, maybe a few red cards for a bit of healthy dose, you know. Yeah, you got to have a red card, you know, in a local rivalry. AFC Wimbledon versus Reading. Reading are, well, they're actually, I think, could be outside the shouts. They're 8 points away from the playoffs now, and it does seem a bit of a large gap, but things change very quickly in football. And up against AFC Wimbledon, who haven't won now in the last 4 games, as I was saying earlier on in the video, I think Reading may be able to do something in this one. I certainly do. There's been some certainly interesting change in performances. I think Liam Richardson has done a great job to improve this side, by the way. 3-0 to the Royals is what I've gone with, of who are the third top scorers since Liam Richardson has come in, from what I remember looking at a stat this week. Bolton Wanderers versus Barnsley. Bolton Wanderers in third. Should really expect to win this game. They're 5 games unbeaten, and Barnsley, you know, they're in 15th. They've not got a lot to play for this season. Been quite poor at Conor Hurahan's team, but I think maybe Barnsley upset the apple cart and win 2-1 to Barnsley. Huddersfield Town versus Blackpool. Another team who may cause an upset in this sort of war of the roses sort of vibe of a match is Blackpool, who've only won once in the last 6 and lost all the others, up against Huddersfield, who have won the last 3 in a row. I just have a sneaky suspicion that Blackpool will win 2-0. I can't really rationalise it. And I'll probably be wrong, but you never know. Mansfield Town versus Exeter City. 11th versus 13th. Only 1 point separating these two teams. But if it wasn't for the few draws, they've had 3 draws in a row, by the way, Mansfield. If they turned them into wins, they would have certainly been, for me, a team well capable of competing towards the playoffs. Now, obviously, if buts and maybes, it's all about results business at the end of the season. But I think they do go back to winning ways. They're still unbeaten in 6. Nigel Clough's men doing a solid job. 3-0 to Mansfield Town in this one. Northampton Town versus Stevenage. Stevenage dropped a few points of late, and that's why they're now sat in 8th outside the playoffs. And Northampton will be hoping to get some points coming their way. I think they get a 0-0 draw ground out at Sixfields in this one. Peterborough United versus Wigan Athletic. 12th place Peterborough are taking on relegation-threatened Wigan Athletic on 31 points, only goal difference outside relegation zone. Wigan are going to need to be hoping for severely the results go the other way, that they can actually start putting some performances together themselves. And I think Peterborough win this one 1-0 at London Road. It's not looking good, is it, for the Latics? Plymouth Argyle versus Lincoln City. 14th place Plymouth. They lost their last game, but before that had 5 games unbeaten. But it's going to be a very difficult game up against Lincoln City, who are joint with Cardiff City as the most informed team in the division. 2 points off the title. The Imps, I think, are doing a really strong job, and nobody really seems to be talking about them, are they? 2-0 to Lincoln City. I'm finally going to actually back them to have a win. I don't think I've done that in quite a while. But yeah, I think it's going to be a win to Lincoln. I can't see it going any other way. Rotherham United versus Cardiff City. And I actually think Lincoln could leapfrog Cardiff, as I think Cardiff are going to be in for a nasty awakening. They're probably thinking, you know, Rotherham, they're in 20th. They're in the relegation battle. It's going to be a bit of an easy game. But 3 games unbeaten now for the Millers. And I actually think at the New York Stadium, a 5-2 win for Rotherham United is what we're going to have on the card. That's going to be the headlines for the following days of football that Rotherham shot league leaders Cardiff. Stockport County versus Leyton Orient. Stockport in 4th, 5 games unbeaten. Very decent by the Hatters, I believe they're called, or nicknamed. They are up against the Leyton Orient side. Now, this was a playoff semi-final last season, but Leyton have shown the side which has really dropped off. Richie Wellens' side in 18th now. 3 losses in a row. They're also in danger of a relegation zone. It's very, very compact. Anyone down from sort of, I would say, Blackpool downwards is in 16th. Is in danger at the moment. I reckon a 1-1 draw in this game. Wycombe Wanderers versus Doncaster Rovers. Wycombe in the relegation. Sorry, not Wycombe. Doncaster in relegation zone, but Wycombe, meanwhile, doing really solid. Actually, one loss within the last 6. So it's not too bad to be a Wycombe fan at the moment. And at Adams Park, maybe a 2-0 win, I think, for Wanderers. A bit of a routine one, maybe. Crawley Town versus Crewe Alexandria. Crewe versus Crawley, is what it's all about. The CRs. And Crawley, well, I was saying a bit earlier in the video about Crewe's inconsistency. And I think Crawley, they're 3 games unbeaten and maybe be able to get another win to their bow here. A 2-0 win is what I'm going with for Crawley. They're at home as well. Could be an interesting one. Swindon Town versus Oldham Athletic. 6th place Swindon, I think, get back to winning ways. I think there's still going to be an inconsistency, but Oldham have literally the definition, it feels like, of inconsistency at the moment. So yeah, a 1-0 win for Swindon Town. Bristol Rovers versus Chesterfield. I think Chesterfield are going to be upset again by Bristol Rovers. So I think are now going to cause a few upsets from now till the end of the season. And I think they maybe win this one at 2-1, which I've got 6 points, which would be great for Bristol Rovers. And that probably lift them up to 18th and, a bit away from that relegation zone threat, which they are currently experiencing. Cheltenham Town versus MK Dons. They've only won once in the last 6 games and lost the rest of Cheltenham. And I think MK Dons, they've had a really good window, in my opinion. As I say, the Milton Keynes County, they've sold a load of Derby County players, or it's pretty much let them go. We've got the likes of Caden Jackson, I think Kane Wilson is still at the club. Curtis Nelson, was it? Did actually Jackson go to MK Dons? Or I may be making him out, but you just look at some of their players at the moment. They've got Nathaniel Mendez-Lang. They've got Callum Patterson, although I think he was slightly different. Kane Wilson, Curtis Nelson. No, is the answer in terms of Jackson. He didn't go, but it's still a decent team. Russian Hepburn Murphy as well. What a player he was back in the day. Jonathan Lecco. They've got a real side, who I think cause some problems in this League Two battle. I think they're probably going to get top 3. I mean, I still think they could potentially seize the title. 1-0 to MK Dons is what I'm going to go with here. A relatively routine win, probably, but it's not. It's getting the points and the boards, Colchester United versus Shrewsbury Town. Shrewsbury are in danger of relegation, 3 points above relegation zone. I said at the beginning of the season, my predictions, I thought Shrewsbury were going to go down, and I think they're going to get a point, maybe, though, against Colchester. A 0-0 draw in Essex. Fleetwood Town versus Bromley. I think Bromley may end up only being reduced to a draw. If Fleetwood's an odd team, they sacked their manager the other week, Pete Wild. I think it was only last week, actually, I was talking about that. They have yet to appoint a permanent manager. I'm going to do a 0-0 draw in this one. And yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to remember. There was somebody in League Two. I need to check it. Who sacked their manager recently. I can't remember who it was. It was Gavin Cohen became in charge of Shrewsbury. There you go. We just missed that out. And I think he was at Brackley Town. And I think actually he's a 50-50 appointment. We'll see with that one. Gillingham versus Tranmere Rovers. 0-0 draw by Fleetwood versus Bromley. If I didn't say, can't remember if I did. Gillingham versus Tranmere Rovers. We're going to make it a good week for Gillingham as they yet again run out winners. I think Tranmere Rovers probably need a shake-up in managers, don't they? They're not doing very well this season, certainly underperforming. I think Andy Crosby maybe needs to go at this point in time. Yeah, he managed to keep them up last season. So maybe, that's where the ambition is. But I would have thought Tranmere would have been a bit more of an ambitious club. 3-0 to Gillingham is what I've gone with. I would have thought Tranmere would have had some aspirations above that sort of 17th place mark. Harrogate Town versus Cambridge United. I've gone with the most maddest results, right? I know Cambridge have won every single week, but I've actually got Harrogate to win 5-4. I don't know where that's come from. That's not a typo, I promise. I have just said that out loud. I'm going to look stupid, but if it comes off, I look like an absolute genius, but it won't. Newport County versus Grimsby Town. We'll go with another 0-0 draw in this one. Grimsby were held to a draw in the last one, and I know they're unbeaten in 6 very good performances actually from the Mariners. But you know what? It could just be that Newport County get a point in this one. I think the current bottom 2 probably are the ones which get relegated, though. It's not been a very good League 2 in terms of performances. Notts County versus Barrow. Barrow lost for the last 4 games in a row, and I think we're looking at Barrow's manager and you're starting to ask him the questions. Are we going to need to see a change within the dugout? And, Paul Gallagher, oh, wait, we have seen, sorry, a change. He came in January, and, I mean, has he done much since? I don't know. He doesn't seem to. Maybe he wasn't the right choice. I don't know. But I'm actually going to go Barrow to have an unlikely win up against Notts County, partly because I want Notts County to lose. But 2-1 to Barrow is what I've gone with here. Walsall versus Barnet. I'm going to go back to winning ways for Walsall as they demolish Barnet 4-1. Surely the Saddlers get to the playoffs. Surely they don't even get it in the end after having such a strong start to the season. Aldershot Town versus SC Halifax Town. An interesting game. Halifax are now in the playoffs. They displaced Southend, although I think Southend will probably displace them back. So they just need to make sure that they can focus on their own games and carry on winning. Aldershot's not an easy game. Only 1 defeat in the last 6 now, Aldershot. And though they're 1 point of the relegation zone, I think we can all probably agree that they're not very likely at this point in proceeding to be relegated and more likely to finish mid-table than anything if they continue their phenomenal form. But I'm going to go with a 4-3 win to Halifax. I just think that playoff quality, they're needing to gain as many wins as possible. And that's what they are doing at this moment in time. Aldrincham versus Yeovil Town. Yeovil down in 15th. Aldrincham in 18th. 1 point separating these 2 teams and neither looking like they're going to rip up this game. 2-1 to Aldrincham. To be honest, don't see much going either way, to be honest, in this one. And yeah, it's not great. Boston United versus Sutton United. I'd say Boston probably need to win this to stay up. As does Sutton. Sutton are only outside relegation zone of goal difference. Boston by 2 points. It's quite a big game, actually. 2-1 to Boston, though, in their new stadium, which I can never remember what it's actually called. But yes, I think Boston probably win this one. Brackley Town versus Solihull Moors. So Brackley Town then actually appointed a successor to Gavin Cohen. From what I can gather with, no, at the moment. So still sort of in the position of sussing out whoever appointment as the successors. May have come as a bit of a blessing in disguise for Brackley, as they were actually, no, to be fair, they suddenly started picking up a load of points of late, haven't they? It was probably more bad than good. And I think Solihull Moors are in a position now where they might be able to capitalise on this. 1-0 to Solihull Moors. Gateshead versus Braintree, a must-win game for Robert Elliott's side up against Braintree. We're at home at the Gateshead International Stadium, but they keep on losing Gateshead. You know, I can't stress this enough, how bad of a run of form they've been on. They haven't picked up like a win since like November in the league. It's ridiculous at this point. How they've gone so long without a win is ridiculous. And I know they've been better performances of late, and don't matter. It's absolute niche. And I think Braintree win this 3-1. Morecambe versus Truro City. I think Truro might actually manage to win this. There's a bit of instability at Morecambe at the moment with the sucking of the manager and a bit of turmoil. And Truro may be able to pounce on that and win 5-0 is what I've gone with in this one. Rochdale versus Carlisle United. Top end of the table clash. As second place Rochdale is currently speaking versus third place Carlisle. 5 points is all that separates them. But I think Carlisle might reduce that deficit by winning this one. 1-0 to Mark Hughes' side. Decent performance from Carlisle, I think. Scunthorpe United versus Southend United. Scunthorpe in 5th, Southend in 8th. Although it's Southend, which I think is the one which needs to make up the ground. And maybe, therefore, have that bit between their teeth and manage to win it. 3-1 to Southend United. Tamworth versus Hartlepool. Can we just give some credit to Hartlepool at the moment? 3 points now off the playoffs, but you know they've since their new owners have come in, they've actually, I think, had a bit more of a new lease of life for them. I think they've actually looked like they might give a go for this season, and they're certainly not to be underestimated. Goals do need to start coming, but maybe that will start around about now. I'm going to go with a 1-0 win for Hartlepool. I mean, their opposition in the terms of Tamworth, not a lot. They're a bit of mixed form at the moment. You know, sort of don't really know which team's going to turn up. Woking versus Boreham Wood. Yeah, I think Boreham Wood get back to winning ways here up against Woking. I mean, it's a suburbia battle. Which of these is the town which is the most suburban of London? Even though it's not in Greater London, you know what I mean. 1-0 to Boreham Wood is what I've gone with here. If they can get back to winning ways, then it bodes well. If they don't, they probably drop out of playoffs. York City versus Forest Green Rovers. Tough one, very tough one. Top of the league, York City, up against 6th place Forest Green Rovers. A tough game for York in general, as they are trying to accumulate as many wins as possible. But up against the Forest Green, it's not an easy game. And a 1-1 draw is what I got at the LNER Community Stadium. Eastleigh versus Wealdstone. Yeah, it could be probably a mid-table clash, really. 12th versus 16th. Eastleigh, I'm going to have to say it, 4 defeats in a row. Are we going to have to start questioning the manager of Eastleigh at this point in time? They should really be a top half table finishing team, in my opinion, sort of around where they are, sort of a mid-table side. I mean, it is. There's been a lot of investment to Scott Bartlett's team, and it does seem a bit disappointing at the moment. We're going to go with a 1-1 draw in this one. But a defeat here, I would say, starts questions, because, you know, other teams around them will start picking up points and they'll be plunged a bit into relegation zone. They're only 4 points off the relegation zone now. With teams like Sutton and Braintree and Gateshead and the like, all down there, Truro, Morecambe, they're all playing each other. You know, and that's actually not a good position because it means they'll probably go down a few places. A Derbyshire Day battle. Alfreton Town versus Buxton Town. Oh, but just Buxton. I want Buxton to get into the playoffs, but I think 4 points, it's 50-50. I think I'm probably more likely to say yes just because of a bias that I have baked in me that they make it. But at the same time, Alfreton, I don't want them to be relegated and they're 4 points off safety. Which 4 points is more likely to happen this season? It's a really difficult question, actually. And I think maybe at North Street, I know it's not called that anymore, but Alfreton Town are going to have as a winning, coming out as winners 3-2. They've got the games in hand. 2 games in hand against Kings Lynn out relegation zone. If they win them, Alfreton suddenly look like they can stay up this season. I'm just hoping and praying that Alfreton do pull off this miracle and Jake Buxton's side stay up. Bedford Town versus Chester. 14th place Chester versus 16th place Bedford. Mid-table clash with nothing really riding on it is what springs to mind in this occasion. 2-1 to Bedford Town. We'll go home advantage at the Airy. I don't know, really. Hereford versus AFC Fylde. Which is really hard to judge Hereford because by week, they're just not playing that many games because the game's getting called off or whatever. It's really stop-start for the Bulls. And I actually think maybe a 2-2 draw with Fylde because you don't know which side's going to turn up. So I can't really predict them to lose and I can't really predict them to win. If that makes any sense whatsoever, which it invariably doesn't. Leamington versus Oxford City. There's a bit of a local rivalry in this one, isn't there? Local as they sort of come. 21st versus 24th as well. A bit of a needle game on this. And I'm sure all Alfreton fans will be hoping that Leamington win this one. I think Leamington do win this one. They are at home after all. 4-1 to Leamington. I think they do begin to form a bit of a run. The pressure's a bit off them now, to be honest. They're pretty much done and out. They're relegated. Not mathematically, but it's almost a full-blown certainty. So they can play to their heart's desire. Marine versus Scarborough Athletic. 10th place Marine versus 7th place Scarborough. If Scarborough want to stay in the playoffs, I think this is the sort of games they need to win up against Marine, and I think they do. I think a 1-0 win narrowly away for Scarborough is going to be the result. Merthyr Town versus Chorley. Merthyr in the top 3, but they have lost the last 3 games in a row. But I think maybe they go back to winning ways. Chorley aren't impressing me much, and they're at home at Penny Darren Park. 1-0 to Merthyr Town. Certainly wouldn't wipe them out getting promoted completely. Peterborough Sports versus Curzon Ashton. Yes, Peterborough in 18th, Curzon Ashton in 12th. Peterborough have won the last 3 though, and I think they maybe get a point out of this one. A 1-1 draw in this one. Radcliffe versus Kings Lynn Town. I think Kings Lynn might provide a shock upset and win this one. Radcliffe aren't winning as much as they were at one point in the season. 2-1 to Kings Lynn Town. Just got a feeling. South Shields versus Macclesfield. Got Macclesfield to win this one, which doesn't help South Shields a lot, and it would probably be glad for Fylde are dropping points, but I think Macclesfield is an unknown quantity because they're actually quite a strong team. We've seen them displace Crystal Palace in the FA Cup. You know, we saw that on the channel, and a 1-0 win to Macclesfield is when I got here. A decent side. Southport versus Darlington. Darlington maybe hold for a draw here, actually. I think Southport could hold them to a 0-0 draw at home. It'd be very much an away team performance by Southport, but it gets the job done. Spennymoor Town versus Kidderminster Harriers. 13th place Spennymoor versus 4th place Kidderminster. Right, don't rule out Spennymoor, but rule out Spennymoor. I'm going to 1-1 draw, though, here at Spennymoor's ground. If this game isn't called off, which it's been wet and miserable for what feels like an eternity now in the northeast. So this game may still not go ahead. Works Uptown versus AFC Telford United. Telford win this one as well, in my opinion. Fairly routine win. 2-1 win over Works Uptown. I'm hoping they get fallen relegated to Alfreton Town, to be honest. Bath City versus Hemel Hempstead Town. Yeah, I think Bath could maybe hold Hemel Hempstead to an unlikely draw. A 0-0 draw at Quirton Park is what I've got here. Chelmsford City versus ASC Towton. Towton are an interesting one. They're sort of here, there, and everywhere. Doesn't know which team's going to turn up each week. And Chelmsford are doing quite well actually at the moment. They've got 4 wins in the last 6 games. Not a bad, shabby performances of late. I think Towton maybe win 2-1. It's an odd one. It really is an odd one, isn't it? Chesham United versus Eastbourne Borough. I think Eastbourne maybe drag out a point here. 0-0 draw is what I've got in this one. Dagenham and Redbridge versus Chippenham Town. I think Dagenham and Redbridge get back to winning ways. Chippenham, well, they're relegated. Let's face it. I know they're 8 points of safety, but yeah, Dagenham and Redbridge are going to put a dagger into their hopes of survival. 1-0 to Dagenham and Redbridge. Dover Athletic versus Woking. I think not Woking, Worthing. Why have I said Woking there? Worthing. And I think, yeah, Worthing, they're a team in the top 4. They haven't won in a while, but once they click back into gear, I think they do win the title. I think maybe a win for Worthing we'll go with. 2-0 to Worthing at the Crabble. Enfield Town versus Horsham. Horsham have had a few disappointing results of late, and I think maybe the misery is compiled yet again by the North London side, Enfield Town, at home, as they win 2-1. Hampton and Richmond Borough versus Hornchurch. I think Hornchurch win this. If they want to get to the title, they're going to have to beat Hampton and Richmond Borough, who are relegation threatened. 3-1 to Hornchurch, posing further danger to the Beavers of ending further down the league and potentially relegated. Maidenhead United versus Farnborough. As we've said already, Maidenhead are a bit of a side that no one can quite tell which one's turning up. And I think Farnborough can maybe cause a bit of a shock then and get a point out of this. 2-2 draw at York Road. Maidstone United versus Slough Town. I think Slough can maybe get a draw from the Kent side. I mean, the Kent side Maidstone should be really getting into the playoffs at this rate. But yeah, we'll go with a 1-1 draw here. Salisbury versus Ebbsfleet United. Salisbury in 18th, Ebbsfleet in 7th. Yeah, I mean, Ebbsfleet you'd expect to get to the playoffs at this point, right? I mean, they only lost once in the last 6 and all other games were wins, you know. I mean, but I just have a feeling that Salisbury are going to win this 3-1. I can't tell you entirely why. I just have a sneaky suspicion that they might get a win. Torquay United versus Dorking Wanderers. First versus second. Just neck and neck on points. As whoever wins this will end up top of the league at the end of the weekend, probably. 1-0 to Torquay United at Plainmoor. That's what I've gone with. Weston-super-Mare versus Tonbridge Angels. 5th place Weston-super-Mare. If they can get back to winning ways, don't rule them out of a title race. But, I mean, it's a difficult game, Tonbridge. They've not got anything to play for, but they do have good performances occasionally. But yeah, 3-0 to Weston-super-Mare. Local derby, the M23 derby, no less. Brighton Hove Albion versus Crystal Palace. Mid-table, as you like, fair to be honest. That's mainly the reason why this rivalry sprung up. 13th versus 15th. I mean, Crystal Palace may be in danger of getting involved in a relegation scrap, and Glasner's head is well and truly turned. But if he can get it right back into it to get himself up for this game, I'm sure he will. 3-1 to Crystal Palace is what I've gone with. Liverpool versus Man City. I think at Anfield, Liverpool win this one. I was asked earlier who I thought was going to win the title, and I said Arsenal. And this is a reason why, because I think Man City throw away results up against the likes of Liverpool. And I think Liverpool, therefore, do win 2-0. Swansea City versus Sheffield Wednesday. I'm going to go with an unlikely Sheffield Wednesday win. It's hard to place where Swansea are at the moment. 15th place, all a bit of a roller coaster of emotions really going on at Swansea at the moment. I'm not quite sure what to make of them, to be honest. So yeah, I've gone with a 1-0 Sheffield Wednesday away from home. Might be a bad call. Sheffield United versus Middlesbrough. I think Sheffield United win this one, this Yorkshire derby. 3-1 to the Blades. Well, that's concluding this video. Please do subscribe if you're new around here. That'd be hugely appreciated. We're going to try and do a live watch along together of the EFL Cup Semi-Final, Arsenal versus Chelsea. We also have, yesterday I released a video about the history of football in Rushden and looking a bit about Rushden and diamonds and all that. So if you're interested in that sort of history of football, then do go and check that out as well. But I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye for now.